and welcome. I'm Ananya Datta. Thanks for tuning into WION World is One. We come to you with another breaking news that's coming in from West Asia. Lebanon security officials say that Israel is conducting airstrikes on the Hezbollah South Beirut stronghold. The Israeli military said it carried out a targeted strike in Beirut without giving more details. The Israeli army also said that nearly 120 launches were identified crossing into northern Israel from Lebanon. It added that some of them had been intercepted by the aerial defense array. Hezbollah claims it fired rockets barrages at Israeli military bases in retaliation for the strikes on South Lebanon as tensions continue to soar following deadly sabotage attacks on its communication devices, something that Lebanon sees as an assassination and Hezbollah sees as an act of war. Israel has not yet commented on the explosion of thousands of Hezbollah pagers and walkie-talkies that killed at least 37 people and wounded nearly 3,000. Now, these attacks took place over the course of Tuesday and Wednesday this week, but it has been blamed by the Iran-backed group Hezbollah for the attacks. This is a developing story, which of course we are tracking very closely. We're also being told that at least 5 people have lost their lives in the latest attacks. Lebanon's national news agency NNA is also reporting that at least 5 children are among the victims of a strike on a building in the area of Jamau Street in southern Beirut. Hezbollah claims that it has fired at least 140 rockets into Israel after southern Lebanon was targeted by Israeli attacks. Remember, this comes exactly 24 hours after Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah called the acts on Tuesday and Wednesday as an act of war and quote-unquote a massacre, and also said that Israel has crossed all red lines with the attacks on Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's shift our focus to politics and elections now. In just over 12 hours from now, Sri Lanka will hold a pivotal presidential election. And this will be the first poll since the island nation plunged into an economic crisis. While there are record 38 candidates in the race, there is no clear favourite. Voting in Sri Lanka will begin tomorrow at 7 a.m. local time and conclude by 4 p.m. local time, and counting will begin shortly after. Results are expected by late Sunday.
What you see right behind me is the Independence Square of Colombo. It has been 76 years since Sri Lanka gained independence in 1948. However, as of right now, people feel trapped now more than ever. A majority of them feel that high costs of living coupled with unbearable taxes is making life extremely difficult here in Sri Lanka. That is why 17 million voters will be heading to the polls tomorrow, with a majority of them feeling that Sri Lanka needs to change, especially when it comes to taxes and costs of living. 38 candidates vying for one spot. Sri Lanka decides this weekend. Reporting for WION World is One from Colombo, I'm Dasania Thalda.
As Sri Lanka prepares for its presidential election on September 21st, the economy is at the forefront of voters' concerns following the nation's severe economic crisis a few years back. This next report talks about the challenges ahead for the new government and what impact it could have on the citizens of the island nation.
Sri Lanka's economy is slowly recovering after the country faced a sovereign default in April 2022. That crisis was driven by dwindling foreign exchange reserves and public debt exceeding $83 billion. This crisis led to soaring inflation, peaking near 70%, and widespread unrest that ultimately ousted ex-president Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Under interim President Ranil Wickremesinghe, Sri Lanka secured a $2.9 billion IMF bailout in 2023. That's the 17th bailout in the country's history. Since then, the economy has shown signs of recovery, marked by decreasing inflation, stabilizing borrowing costs, and a revitalized tourism sector. However, challenges remain. Poverty levels have doubled since 2019, with over 25% of the population living below the poverty line. The country also faces one of the highest interest payments to government revenue ratios globally, and a grace period on bilateral loan repayments will end in 2028. The incoming president must navigate these economic hurdles while maintaining the momentum of ongoing structural reforms and ensuring fiscal discipline. The recent shift in governance has led to the implementation of over 70 new laws focused on anti-corruption and public debt management. However, any rollback on these reforms could jeopardize Sri Lanka's access to crucial IMF funds. Ultimately, the election outcome will significantly influence economic policies that impact daily life for Sri Lankans. A government that prioritizes sustained reform and fiscal responsibility is essential for stabilizing the economy and improving living conditions for the populace. The new leader's approach to managing Sri Lanka's complex geopolitical relationships, particularly with India and China, will also play a critical role in shaping the country's economic trajectory. Business Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And to take this conversation further, we are being joined by Bhavani Fonseca from Colombo, Sri Lanka. Bhavani is a lawyer and senior researcher at the Center for Policy Alternatives. Welcome to the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Fonseca.
Thank you.
Every time we talk about the presidential elections in Sri Lanka, we keep going back to the 2022 chaos, if I can call it, in a dark chapter in the country's history. How much of what happened in the last 2 years sticks with the voters, and how much of that will we see on Saturday?
So I think the 2022 economic crisis and the subsequent people's protests is very much a recent memory for many Sri Lankans, and this whole economic recovery phase is going to be central in terms of decision making for many who go to vote tomorrow. So it's in a way a referendum of the present government and the present president's policies and how he has navigated the last 2 years. And I think economy is going to be the key deciding factor for many as to how the stability can continue.
Right. Ms. Fonseca, we have been speaking to a lot of people, a lot of voters in Colombo. One of them said a very interesting thing yesterday. She said, and I'm quoting her, "None of the mainstream political parties are willing to continue the objectives of the protests we saw in 2022. What do you make of these old horses running in this election?"
Well, I think there is a section of society, and not just in Colombo, outside as well, who feel that the call for a system change, which was very articulated and very strong in 2022, has not been reflected in the last 2 years. And a lot of the candidates don't talk about it. But that said, I think there are 2 opposition candidates who are leading in the campaign who speak to some of the concerns the protesters raised in terms of promising abolishing the executive presidency, to addressing corruption. There is that, but there is also concern that, you're seeing a lot of the old faces, and will they be able to really deliver? So lots of questions among the voters. But I think it's also very important to understand the dynamics in the country, not just in Colombo, but rest of the country as well.
Right, you make a very fair point. You spoke about the old faces. Let's talk about the new face, Namal Rajapaksa. Why is he running?
Well, Namal Rajapaksa is, I wouldn't say a new face. He's been in politics for a couple of years now. He comes from a family that has been in politics. His father and his uncle were both president. And if anyone remembers, his uncle was at the helm when the economic crisis hit and had to flee the country in response to the massive protests. Namal Rajapaksa has been in that government, so he's not a new face. He's the youngest candidate in this campaign. And I think in that people look to him as what is the plan for the next election. I don't think anyone expects him to win this time, but it's basically continuing the Rajapaksa name and continue to keep the SLPP, the political party, relevant in the present political climate.
Right. He seems to be playing the long game, if I can say that. Ms. Fonseca, it was back in 1960 that Sri Lanka gave the world's first female president. What happened this time? Not only are the mainstream parties not fielded a single female president, it's a record number 38 presidential candidates and none of them are women. What happened?
That's a good question, and women's participation in politics in Sri Lanka is really very disappointing considering the fact that we did have a woman prime minister and a woman president. And that's quite telling in terms of society. But I have to also make a note here that we may not have a presidential candidate in terms of a woman, but women have played a critical role in this campaign. And I think at least the leading candidates have very powerful, strong women in those campaigns, and they've played a key role in the last few weeks. So it's a question to ask in terms of why there's no woman candidate, but it should also look at the bigger campaigns and the political parties, and women are increasingly becoming a very vocal voice and a voice that cannot be ignored in Sri Lanka.
All right, that's good to hear. Ms. Fonseca, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, Sri Lanka's election process is complicated, and at a time when there is no front runner, the election could produce a no clear winner. The question is, what happens then? Our next report, I explain. Sri Lanka's presidential elections follow a unique process. Designed in 1981, voters participate in a limited ranked voting system, which basically means that they can express up to 3 preferences for the president. Let's break that down for you. Imagine you're a voter and you have head out on election day. Now this year, there are record 39 candidates. But to keep it simple, let's consider a hypothetical situation with just 5 candidates, A, B, C, D and E. According to the rule, you can have 3 preferences. Let's say your first preference is A, second is B, and third is C. Once all votes are counted and A gets over 50% of the votes, she or he is the clear winner. But there can also be another situation where no candidate gets over 50% of votes immediately. In that case, all candidates except the 2 with the highest number of votes are eliminated. And after this, the second and third preferences from the eliminated candidates are redistributed. So in our hypothetical situation, all votes of B, D and E will be transferred to A and C. And the process will continue until one of the 2 candidates secures an outright majority. What's interesting is that in practice, this system has rarely been used in Sri Lanka. So much so that many citizens are unaware that they can rank multiple candidates. The reason is that since the start of elections, only one candidate from either major parties have become a clear winner. This time it might be different. More than 17 million people are eligible to vote. The results are expected within a day of voting, and the winner must be sworn in within 2 weeks. Now you keep hearing that this election is pivotal for Sri Lanka, but why is that? Watch our next report to understand what happened in the last 2 years and how it will have a bearing in Saturday's election.
That should be the happiest day of our life, because he has robbed us. I mean, he has robbed his country. Can't you see how many people are walking?
I would like to recognize the severity of the crisis here in Sri Lanka and the disproportionate impact it is having on the poor and vulnerable.
Let's shift focus now. Imran Khan's PTI has announced a mega show of strength in Lahore on Saturday. The former Prime Minister, who has been in jail for the past 15 months, has urged citizens to join the rally, claiming that the future of Pakistan is at stake. Speaking to reporters at the Adiala jail, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf founder called the September 21st public rally in Lahore a do-or-die event for the party. He hoped the PTI and the nation will come out whatever is the situation. Calling it the last institution from which people have expectations, Imran Khan said Pakistan will become a banana republic if it is destroyed. He urged people not to be afraid to go to jail, adding that he has already spent 15 years in prison and is ready to stay for more time. While the PTI launched its mass contact campaign to muster support for the much-hyped Lahore Power Show at the Minar-e-Pakistan ground on September 21st, the Lahore High Court has dismissed a plea seeking a ban on PTI's rally. On 8th of September, Imran Khan's party took out a rally in Sangjani, where clashes were reported between Imran Khan's supporters and Pakistani police after supporters failed to disperse. According to reports, participants at the rally clashed with the police. PTI workers threw stones, leading to the police lobbing tear gas shells at them. Now, Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik has a report from Islamabad.
Well, Imran Khan has urged people to come out for his PTI rally in Lahore, scheduled to be held tomorrow, terming it as a do-or-die rally, saying that if his government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa gets to go and be seizes, he doesn't care, and that people have to come out for their own survival. Remember, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf have announced a rally for Lahore, for Punjab, for the 21st of September, and this was announced during the party's gathering here in Islamabad. While the admins are yet to give them permission, the PTI alleges a crackdown against its workers. Anas Malik in Islamabad, Pakistan, for WION World is One.
Let's now shift our focus to the upcoming US elections. Another day of campaigning by both presidential candidates saw strong sentiments reflecting in statements by Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. On Thursday, Harris addressed the issue of gun violence in America as she sat down for a campaign event with TV host Oprah Winfrey. Harris walked a tightrope while speaking on gun laws, saying that she will not take away anyone's guns but wants a ban on assault rifles and stricter background checks.
I think for far too long on the issue of gun violence, some people have been pushing a really false choice to suggest you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, and I'm in favor of assault weapons bans, universal background checks, red flag laws. And these are just common sense.
Meanwhile, in the red camp, presidential nominee Donald Trump was trying to galvanize Jewish support ahead of the November 5th elections. Trump went so far as to say that Israel will be eradicated if he loses the election, and that Jewish people will be responsible for his loss.
In my opinion, the Jewish people would have a lot to do with the loss. If I'm at 40%, if I'm at 4%, think of it, that means 60% are voting for Kamala, who in particular is a bad Democrat. The Democrats are bad to Israel, very bad. They'll never change because they have a section of their party now which has become amazingly and quickly very powerful, vote-wise. I mean, Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian.
As the electoral battle heats up and both sides scramble to rake in support, there is one community of voters that is leaning towards a third presidential candidate. According to a poll in late August, Arab American and Muslim voters are increasingly leaning towards Green Party candidate Jill Stein. The poll conducted in battleground Michigan reveals that 40% of the Arab and Muslim voter base prefer Stein, while 18% preferred Trump. Harris, who is President Joe Biden's vice president, is trailing at 12%. But this survey was before the September 10th presidential debate. It remains to be seen how much of an influence world issues bear on the upcoming elections. Shifting focus to Bangladesh now, the country's interim government will seek extradition of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina after the beginning of the trial against her in the cases of murder. The caretaker government's law advisor Asif Nazrul said that the prosecutors for the trial in Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal have already been appointed. He said that the interim government will seek Hasina's extradition from India as soon as the trial process starts. Sheikh Hasina took shelter in India after the fall of the Awami League government on August 5th, following the mass agitations of the students. Hasina and dozens of other leaders of her cabinet and Awami League are facing cases that accuse them of murders during the July-August protests. Meanwhile, the Dhaka University officials have decided to ban any political activity on the university campus. All types of political activities by students, teachers and employees will remain banned until further notice. The decision was taken at a meeting of the highest policy-making body of the university syndicate. During quota reform protests that led to the ouster of Sheikh Hasina government, students had demanded a ban on politics connected to the political parties on campus. Meanwhile, police have detained 4 students of the university for their alleged involvement in the lynching of a youth on the campus. According to reports in Bangladeshi media, a group of students allegedly beat up a man in phases after confining him in a dormitory on suspicion of being a thief. At another university in the country's capital, 8 students were suspended in connection with the death of a former student. The victim was a former student of Jahangirnagar University and leader belonging to the student wing of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's party. And with that, we're wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at yowan.com.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
This week on Wings, our favorite international destinations you can visit from India, even if you are on a shoestring budget. We showcase yoga practitioners in one of Mexico's most scenic spots. Feature how spacewalk tourism pushes new boundaries. And how the Mid-Autumn Festival adds a touch of color to China. Only on WION World is One.
This week on Take It Out, we explain how you can protect yourself from the SIM swap fraud. We tell you how you can prevent your car from being stolen. And we explain what parents can do to keep their children safe on social media. This and more on WION World is One at these times.
Senegal to vote in snap parliamentary elections in mid-November after President Bassirou Diomaye Faye dissolved the opposition-dominated chamber, a move he's banking on to implement his policy agenda. 3 Americans are among 37 people sentenced to death in the Democratic Republic of Congo over what the army says was a coup attempt. A military court handed the sentences to 37 out of 51 defendants, including a Belgian, Briton, and Canadian, all naturalized Congolese. And a vibrant artwork and powerful solo drama Iloya unfolded on stage in Nigeria, shedding light on the realities people face while pursuing their dreams and how they make peace with the outcomes. That's this week on Wild of Africa at these times on WION World is One.
This week on Inside South Asia, the stage is set. All eyes on Sri Lanka in what is arguably the country's most crucial presidential election. Pakistan's government pushes for power over the judiciary via an amendment to the constitution. There is plenty of controversy and political string pulling at work. And we take you to Bhutan as the kingdom celebrates its lineage in Tibetan Buddhism. All this and much more on Inside South Asia.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond Fine Print with me, Ananya Datta. Let's get started with the headlines.